everyone. So, as mentioned, my name is Alex Breslin. I am a PhD candidate at the Joint Program of Survey Methodology. Excuse me. I first want to take a moment just to say thank you to the UAS FIN survey, as well as the UAS panel. This work could not have been done at all without the generous data sharing that is there. And so just a quick thank you. This work, as Marco said, does follow on some of the fantastic work that's come already into exploring this data, as well as follows on some of the stuff that was mentioned briefly by Andrew Warren in his introduction, in his presentation a moment ago. So I wanted to take a moment before I moved on here just to describe what a passive data collection is. I think from this room we all know, but I don't want to make that assumption. So for this work, for my work, a passive data collection is different from a survey or an active data collection, as I've been terming it, because once someone has decided to participate, their data is shared for the discrete data for the discrete amount of time is shared with no more interaction. And it's quite different than an active survey. And the passive data collections are generally administered alongside another survey or a larger data collection, but they can also be administered independent. And the UAS FIN data that I'm working with on the UAS panel is somewhere in between. So it's an interesting data to be looking at here. So the overarching problem with passive data collection and larger survey work in general is that we still see, or we have a very low response rates. From the literature, I've found between 12 and 30% response rates to passive data collections that are linked or connected to panels or other surveys where people are already familiar with the organization collecting the data. And there's been little exploration to this point as to how concerning these rates are. So from the literature, we know that there are sample member characteristics that really impact whether or not someone will be willing to participate in a passive data collection. And those are largely turned to age and education and familiarity with online technology. But we also have evidence from studies in which people were hypothetically invited to passive data collection, so not actually participating, just would you be interested in a study like this? We find that trust and privacy are hugely correlated with whether they're willing to participate. So my work really focuses on understanding how privacy and trust impacted the willingness to participate in this particular study, which is the UAS FIN study. I'm not going to speak too much on this work since I think it was covered now, but as my slide shows, I've included 4 studies, 4 iterations of this invitation to date. And for this work, we've seen a participation rate for each study between 10 and 12%, which is the 11% that was discussed in this earlier presentation. I did want to just take a moment to define what I'm working with here. So for participation, I'm referring to an individual who was invited to participate in this study and then linked at least one financial institution. I don't know how many were linked. I don't know who dropped out after that. But for right now, I'm focused on people that said yes, consented, and then linked at least one bank account. My variables of interest here, so I'm really focused on whether there could be any bias in this work. So I'm focused on variables of the outcome of interest are whether there's financial activity that's different between participants and non-participants. And the focus is on financial activity, as that's a key area of this study for someone that would be wanting to use this data to predict different or estimate different levels of financial activity. So I'm focusing on whether the sample member uses online banking. We know that everyone has access to an online bank, but having access and using are different. So I've collected whether someone is using online banking, has ever checked their account balance over the internet, ever transferred money from one account to another, ever banked online at a computer. They used an app on their smartphone, so it was slightly different, or regularly pay with automatic bill payment. These variables of interest come from previous UAS studies, UAS surveys that were fielded at the same month that the individual was invited to the UAS Fin panel. So hopefully that catches the timing issue there a bit. Also including in my work, the gender, age, education, and income, and then attitudes of privacy and trust, which I really have proxy measures for. So for privacy, I'm looking at, my first measure is a level account of item non-response to sensitive questions that were on the HRS. And then awareness of privacy practice, which was just a simple question asking respondents whether they know how to adjust the privacy settings on their smartphone. For trust, I'm looking at one of the big 5 questions of asking someone whether they are generally trusting. And then as a second proxy, I have trust in organizations, which was when individuals were asked to link their credit report in a study as well. So a very similar ask. And that's gonna be my proxy for trust for the research organization itself. So my first research question is here is just one, like, are there any differences between the self-reported financial behaviors and participation? And then if this gap does exist, can it be accounted for with some of the simple demographic variables that we might find in a traditional weighting scheme, or is there more going on here, particularly with trust and privacy? So the first result is yes, there are differences in the self-reported financial measures between those who were invited to participate and those that did participate. The correlations, I looked at correlations here, I don't present them, but they aren't actually as highly correlated, these self-reported financial behaviors, as I had expected. So I think this really does show that there's something different going on here between someone that's willing to participate and not. And I don't think that's very surprising, as we're asking them to be involved with a technology and to share sensitive information. You want or expect someone to be familiar with the technology and with sharing information over the internet in the past. I don't share the logistic regressions here just for the size on the screen, but I did run 3 models to explore this. And the first model just included the demographics, age, gender, education. And I find that participation decreases with age and increases with education, as we expected. When I added each self-reported financial variable one at a time to this model, found that only the highest education group and the oldest age groups remained consistent at all. Everything else, the demographics, sort of fell away. When I included all the self-reported financial behaviors together, only using a banking app online, as well as the oldest education group, and again, the oldest age group remained significant, but it was marginally significant. I think this is interesting because the online banking app is a bit different than what respondents are asked to do in this study, which is computer-based for the most part, or could be computer-based for the most part, and the other self-reported financial behaviors, which could be done on a computer or an app. The attitudes that I included one at a time next showed that the trust in organizations actually had a negative relationship with participation. And this is something I'm starting to explore a bit more here. Don't really understand why that necessarily was showing that way, but it did maintain in the full model with, again, just the highest level of education and the trust in organization being significant there. Again, marginally significant, but still might be playing a role. So in summary here, I did find that there's differences between those that were invited to participate and those that did actually participate. However, I controlled for respondent demographics that would be included in a general weighting scheme. Most of those differences did fall away. So that's good. That's good news, except there's really an inability to capture the respondent's attitude and of trust in a traditional weighting scheme, really plugging the benefit of you being able to tie data back into other surveys and to really be able to contextualize what you're seeing at the respondent level. Future research for me is really to understand more about this relationship, the proxy I use for the trust in organization, which is the request to link a credit score. And I can show you the question. It does not come across as a hypothetical request. I don't know if it actually occurred, but as a reader, it would seem to be that they're asking for a credit score and will link a credit score. So my initial thought is maybe that I've already shared my credit score information with you. Sharing my bank account information might just be pushing it a bit too far, and that plays into the privacy concerns a bit there. But that's where I'll stop and go for future research.